There's a kind of attention that doesn't turn off. You know someone like this. Or you are someone like this. The person who reads a room the moment they walk in. Who understands the dynamics underneath the conversation before anyone names them. Who knows, in a way they couldn't quite explain, that something is wrong. Usually before anything is said. This is real. The capacity is real. There's something in the architecture of certain people's perception that runs deeper and faster than average. Genuine pattern recognition applied not to data, but to people, to emotional currents, to the space between what someone says and what they mean. For a long time, it serves you. But Jung wrote something in Psychological Types that I've returned to more often than almost anything else he produced. He was describing a principle borrowed from Heraclitus, that any extreme, one-sided force, when it runs long enough without check, eventually turns into its own opposite. He called it enantiodromia. Push anything far enough in one direction, and it flips. Strength held too rigidly becomes brittleness. Clarity, real hard-won clarity about what you perceive, pushed to its extreme, converts into something else. Here's what it converts into. A quiet exhaustion without a clear cause. A growing distance from the things you're observing. The strange experience of understanding everything around you and feeling nonetheless increasingly absent from it. When one function dominates the psyche long enough, when one way of engaging the world becomes the only way, the other functions don't disappear. They accumulate. They build counter-pressure. And eventually something shifts. For the person who always sees everything, that shift isn't sudden blindness. It's subtler. It's the inability to stop watching long enough to simply be somewhere. The accumulating sense that you are always slightly outside your own life, perceiving it, narrating it internally, but not quite inside it. The attention that reads a room cannot, while it is reading the room, simply be in the room. That sounds abstract until you feel it. Until you notice, in a conversation you genuinely care about, that you are simultaneously present and monitoring yourself being present. Forming interpretations before you've finished listening. And beneath all that processing, a faint sense that something you wanted from the exchange, some quality of actual contact, has slipped by while you were accounting for it. Now here's the part that's hardest to hear. The part people who see everything are least prepared for. Some of what you see is not what's actually there. Not always. Not even most of the time. But the person with the most sophisticated perceptive capacity is also the person most at risk of a specific error. One Jung spent much of his career studying and explaining to people who were among the last to believe it applied to them. He called it projection. In Volume 9 of the collected works, Ion, he laid out the mechanism precisely. The shadow, the part of the psyche that doesn't match the image we hold of ourselves, doesn't sit quietly. It externalizes. It attaches to people outside us and creates the sensation of clear seeing when what's actually happening is more complicated. The shadow borrows the channel you already use, the rapid, deep recognition that has been right so many times, and routes its own material through it with the authority of all your previous accuracy. You see something in someone, and you trust the seeing, because the seeing has earned trust. The question Jung would ask, without accusation, is, whose darkness are you actually seeing? Not always yours, but sometimes. And the person most skilled at reading others is often the last one to find out. I worked in hospice for the better part of 12 years. Somewhere around year 8, I noticed something that took me longer than it should have to name. I had become very good at reading my patients. I knew what they were feeling before they said it. I could sense within minutes of entering a room where someone was in their process, what they were holding, what they were ready to release. People told me I had a gift for it. What I didn't see was what I was using the gift for. I was using it to manage my distance. If I could read someone from the doorway, understand what they needed before they asked, I could provide it without the full weight of actual contact. Without being truly present with someone who was dying in a way that didn't leave room for me to stay composed and in control. The perception wasn't wrong. My reads were usually accurate. But somewhere, it had stopped being a way of moving toward people and had become a way of staying back from them. Something I held in front of me so I could keep seeing, without risking being fully seen or being fully moved. That's the particular thing about this capacity. It runs outward by default, toward others, away from the interior. There's a paper published in the Jung journal, Rethinking the Cassandra Complex, toward collective reclamation of the capacity to listen, that names what happens over time to people who consistently see what others cannot or will not. The Cassandra figure isn't simply about being right when no one believes you. It's about what prolonged disbelief does to the one who sees. The way that being consistently accurate and consistently disregarded teaches you to stop sharing what you notice, to carry it silently, to develop an internal account of the world, accurate often, but increasingly sealed off from the people it's observing. Jung identified the deeper structure of this in 2 essays on analytical psychology, Volume 7 of the collected works. He wrote about what happens when a person identifies with the role their capacity creates. The person who reliably reads others correctly starts to occupy a position, the wise observer, ancient, carrying real authority. But archetypal roles weren't built for permanent habitation. When you identify with the archetype rather than being informed by it, something inflates, and that gap fills with a distance from ordinary contact that looks like insight but functions over time as isolation. The one who sees everything eventually has no one to stand beside, not because they drove anyone away, because seeing became the mode of relating, and seeing doesn't require anyone to be present with you. Jung wasn't advocating for blindness. He was interested in where perception ultimately lands, whether it passes through you and returns you to the world, whether the seeing is in service of contact, whether understanding something about a person moves you toward them, troubled by it, actually changed by what you've seen, or whether it accumulates privately until you are more inside your own watching than inside your own life. There's a difference between someone who perceives clearly and returns to participation, available to be affected by what they see, and someone for whom perceiving has quietly become the primary mode of being. The latter isn't more conscious. They're just lonelier. The dangerous side of always seeing everything is not that you see too much. It's that seeing can become a way of not quite arriving, and the people who need you most, including yourself, need you to arrive.